In the 27 or so years that I have been on this planet, I have played hundreds of racing games on many consoles. Rally and off-road games seem to be my go-to, but despite this, and despite owning a PlayStation 3 for close to 15 years, I have never played or even thought about playing a MotorStorm game. So when I found a copy of the first game for sale in my local video game shop for the measly sum of £1, I thought it was about time I should find out what it is that makes people call it one of the most underrated racing games ever. The game was developed by Evolution Studios, a game developer who was no stranger to racing games as they had acquired the WRC license from Unique Development Studios in the early 2000s, and had developed every WRC game for the PlayStation 2. After losing the WRC license to Milestone, Evolution Studios' focus was on a different form of racing off-road for the next generation of PlayStation. They started developing an off-roading game called Stampede, which was later renamed MotorStorm. A CGI trailer for MotorStorm was shown at E3 2005, but Evolution Studios had absolutely nothing to do with it. Although it was CGI, the then representative director of Sony Computer Entertainment, Phil Harrison, told people that it was real gameplay, putting extra work and stress on the employees at Evolution Studios who at the time didn't even have access to a PlayStation 3 dev kit. MotorStorm was released in December 2006 in Japan and March the following year in Europe and North America. The introduction to the game makes it seem like a sort of Mad Max spin-off. The voiceover guy talks about a new breed of warrior being born while showing off-road buggies and motorbikes going through the desert. The warrior is apparently born to rage against the silence of the ancient rocks, born to tear apart the very fabric of the desert, born to win at any cost. And all of this is said with ominous music in the background, but then the tone changes when you realise that it has nothing to do with surviving an apocalyptic wasteland. We are too early in the series for that. The game is actually set at the MotorStorm Festival in Monument Valley, a real place on the Arizona-Utah border. In 2006, setting a game at a festival was more of an original idea than it is now, and it's nothing like the festivals of modern racing games. It's all about cars, bikes, quads, buggies, and trucks racing in the desert. It's not a badly disguised music festival like in Forza Horizon, or whatever the hell the crew is and has become. The game is split up into 4 levels. Every level has these things called tickets, and each ticket has between 1 to 4 events, which without DLC are just normal races, but a downloadable time attack mode was also available. A few of the events that are in the base game allow you to choose whatever vehicle that you have unlocked, but the majority of them restrict you to one type. The entirety of the game's progression is points-based. In total, you need 2,340 points to complete the game. You unlock new vehicles and events when you've got a set number of points, which you get from doing events. MotorStorm only has racing. There's nothing to do on the side, so you'd expect the racing to be amazing, and it is. One of the reasons for this is that you don't just get one type of vehicle in events. Although you do have to race in events that only have 1 or 2 types of vehicles, most of them will include whatever is in the game. And you do get a strange sense of danger riding a motorbike alongside a massive truck, as they can and will take you out given the chance. Your opponents aren't the only thing that can take you out, as your boost can destroy your engine and blow you up if you don't use it in moderation. You have a boost bar which pretty much just indicates how close your engine is to exploding, and if you stop using boost, then your engine will cool back down again. Unlike almost every other game that uses some kind of boost mechanic, you don't need to do anything to get boost. You basically have an unlimited supply of it, you're just limited by your engine's temperature. Overall, I like the gameplay. I think the way the developers handled boost was really inventive, and the AI do put up a challenge. The only problem that I have with it is that with only 8 tracks in the base game, it can get very repetitive. An attempt was made to combat this during the game's development, where the game will slowly introduce new tracks throughout the game, and that does help a bit. The physics are another reason to why the gameplay is so good, and it's not just the way vehicles drive. MotorStorm has real-time ground deformation, which is in a lot of racing games now, but in 2006 it was almost unheard of, and the ground stays deformed for the entire race, which changes the characteristics of the surface that you are driving on. Tracks become more and more slipperier, therefore you sometimes need to find the route less travelled to stay ahead of the AI. Also, if a vehicle hits an object or obstacle, it stays where it ends up, and doesn't respawn to its original position for the rest of the race. And that's even more impressive with the destructible structures. Evolution Studios managed to do this by working with the developers of the Havoc physics engine, but that does come at a cost. MotorStorm only runs at 720p at 30 frames per second. The problem was with the PlayStation 3 CPU, which had a weird architecture. As already mentioned, MotorStorm has 8 tracks, but if you got the DLC or the Complete Edition, then that number gets bumped up to 12. Track design was a big part of the game, but with the entire game being set in the desert, all of the tracks start to look the same. Okay, you do get some variety, such as having the odd track set on rocks and some with slightly more trees, but they're not that different from each other. Even with the lack of variety, the actual track designs are good. Overall, I think the track selection is good, and I can't really be too negative about the lack in variety, as the game is set in the desert, which is mainly sand. There is something that MotorStorm has that no other racing game can match. According to Wikipedia, MotorStorm holds the Guinness World Record for the biggest vehicle variety in a racing game. And probably like most people, I didn't know there was a record for that. You have vehicles such as motorbikes, quad bikes, rally cars, off-road buggies, racing trucks, mud pluggers, and big rigs. There's vehicles based on the DAF CF, Bowler Wildcat, Lancia Delta Integrale, Ford Escort RS Cosworth, and the Chevrolet Monte Carlo NASCAR. They aren't the actual cars, as no car manufacturer would license their cars for a game like this, due to the amount of damage that you'll inflict upon them. And so, just like games from franchises such as Burnout, Flatout, and Stuntman, it's not the cars that sold the game, it's what you do with those cars. And that's something that has gradually been lost in the last 10 to 15 years, as it's now about what cars are in the game, and using certain cars as a selling point for those games, such as the McLaren Senna in Forza Horizon 4, the AMG 1 in Forza Horizon 5, and ASAP Rocky's Mercedes 190E in Need for Speed Unbound. Overall, I really like MotorStorm. Even though it does lack track variety and isn't optimized very well, that is easy to look past, as the rest of the game is amazing. The track designs are thought out really well, the car list is the most diverse that any racing game ever had up to 2006, apparently, and the game was way ahead of its time when it came to its physics. Sony expected too much from not just the PlayStation 3, but also the developers who had to start developing games without a dev kit. But Evolution Studios' end product is one of the best off-road racing games of the 7th generation, and I really do recommend it. This has been my review of MotorStorm on the PlayStation 3. Unlike most racing games, MotorStorm wasn't on my radar, but I can't wait to play and review the later games in the MotorStorm series, which I have been collecting for the past year. If you liked this review, then give it a like. If you didn't, then that's your problem, and if you want to see more, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.